the countries if possible. But that doesn't mean you roll over like Biden did. Biden came in and he immediately approved the pipeline. I couldn't believe it. Then they say Trump wasn't tough on Russia. I wasn't tough. I was the toughest. Putin said, if you're not tough, I would hate like hell to see you. I stopped the biggest economic development job, the biggest job that Russia had ever built. I stopped it. It was dead. And this low IQ president came in and he let them build a pipeline and supply oil and gas all over Europe, you know. So this is really a feel-out meeting a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times, and I've been disappointed because I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. I said, that's cold, but it's a violent war. 5,000 to 7,000 people a week are dying. And you know, there's nobody from here. They're all Russian and Ukrainian people, and some people from the cities, much smaller number, but still, those missiles do damage and they kill a lot of people, but mostly soldiers. And they're young soldiers, although in the case of Ukraine, they're getting much older. They're drafting 60-year-olds now. It's a terrible thing to witness, and I think I have an obligation. Look, this is Joe Biden's war. This is not my war. I made a deal with NATO a month ago. You covered it very accurately, actually. We don't pay anything anymore. You know, we're not paying anything. They are buying things from us, and NATO is paying us. I got it raised from 2% of GDP to 5%. And they're paying us for everything that we send. We're not paying. But Biden approved $350 billion. Europe has spent $100 billion. The money that's been spent and the death is incredible. It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened. You know, we had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. Would have never happened. And when the election was rigged, and then Biden took office, which was barely took office, the auto pen took office, bad things started happening. Bad things, stupid things were said. And it ended up in a war. And you know, and I don't believe this will happen anymore because I have that pretty well covered. This could end up in a third world war. This could have been a third world war. I don't think that's going to happen now. But I thought it was very respectful that the president of Russia is coming to our country as opposed to us going to his country or even a third-party place. But I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. And, you know, I have a great relationship, I think, with all of them. And I get along with Zelensky, but, you know, I disagree with what he's done. Very, very severely disagree. This is a war that should have never happened, wouldn't have happened. But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need. But I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven, and there'll be some swapping, there'll be some changes in land, and the word that they will use is, you know, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine. But they've taken some very prime territory. They've taken largely ocean. You know, in real estate, we call it oceanfront property. That's always the most valuable property. If you're in a lake, a river, or an ocean, it's always the best property. Well, Ukraine, a lot of people don't know that Ukraine was largely 1,000 miles of ocean. That's gone. Other than one small area, Odessa, it's a small area. There's just a little bit of water left. So I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck, and that'll be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled. I mean, there are those that believe that Putin wanted all of Ukraine. I happen to be one of them, by the way. I think if it weren't for me, he would not be even talking to anybody else right now. But I'm going to meet with him. We're going to see what the parameters are. I'm then going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting, yeah. And I'm going to tell them what kind of a deal. I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal. I think a deal should be made for both. I think Russia has to get back into building their country. It's a massive country. I think they have 11 time zones, if you can believe it. It's a massive, it's by far, from the standpoint of land, it's by far the largest. They have tremendous potential in Russia to do well. They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because it's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the President of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a big blow. And then they say, gee, he wasn't so tough. Nobody else would have done that. And I haven't stopped there. I mean, look, I was all set to do things far bigger than that, but I got a call that they'd like to meet, and I'm going to see what they want to meet about. I'd like to see a ceasefire. I'd like to see the best deal that could be made for both parties. You know, it takes two to tango, right? So ultimately, I'll have a meeting next week. I had a great relationship with him, considering the fact that, I was not nice to him because of the pipeline. I ended the pipeline. I also gave the javelins. Do you ever hear of a javelin? Javelin is called a tank buster. They say that Obama gave them sheets and I gave them javelins. If it weren't for me, all those tanks that were destroyed at the first days of the war because the tanks got stuck in the mud, some commander made a better. They would have been in Kiev in 4 hours, going down the highway. But a Russian general made a brilliant decision to go through the farmland instead. And they just had torrential rains, and the rains were so bad, and it was mud, and those tanks got stuck in the mud. I don't know who that general is, but knowing Vladimir, he's probably not around any longer because all those tanks were stuck in the mud, and they went along with the javelins. I gave them the javelins. You know that, right? I gave them javelins. They gave them sheets. But I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first. And then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting. Or I may say, we can make a deal.
If not,
I will tell you this. I've seen a poll coming out of Ukraine. 88% of the people would like to see a deal made. And if you go back 3 years, everybody was gung-ho for war. Everybody's gung-ho for war until you have it. It's an amazing thing. I had it with a couple of countries where I couldn't get a deal done with one particular country. And I just couldn't. The guy's great. He's a friend of mine. Great. Good leader. Tough as hell. I couldn't get the deal done. And then he went into war for a short period of time. You know where I'm talking about. First term. And it was nasty. Guys being killed all over the place. And he went through 1 week of war, and I was able to get the deal done. He said, this is nasty. Yes, please.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you were saying there. First of all, Volodymyr Zelensky is not invited on Friday?
He wasn't a part of it. I would say he could go, but he's gone to a lot of meetings. He's been there for 3.5 years. Nothing happened.
And what is the definition?
I mean, do you want somebody that's been doing this for 3.5 years? What's the definition of a good deal? I'll tell you after I hear what the deal is. Because there could be many definitions. You're talking about a very large and complex situation. Now, I tell you, the war that I just settled with Azerbaijan and with, as you know, in Armenia was almost as complex as this one, having to do with routes, trade.
Meeting on Friday with Vladimir Putin?
Well, we're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask you two questions, one about China, one about Russia, if I could. On China, your administration agreed to send the most advanced or advanced NVIDIA and AMD chips.
No, obsolete, no.
Obsolete chip. Well, and then 15% of the
You
profits
mean the
come back.
20s? No, this is an old chip that China already has. And I deal with Jensen, who's a great guy, and NVIDIA. The chip that we're talking about, the H20, it's an old chip. China already has it in a different form, different name, but they have it. Or they have a combination of two will make up for it and even then some. Now Jensen Jensen's a very brilliant guy, and Jensen also has a new chip, the Blackwell. Do you know what the Blackwell is? The Blackwell is super duper advanced. I wouldn't make a deal with that, although it's possible I'd make a deal, a somewhat enhanced in a negative way Blackwell. In other words, take 30% to 50% off of it. But that's the latest and the greatest in the world. Nobody has it. They won't have it for 5 years. But the H20 is obsolete. You know, it's one of those things, but it still has a market. So I said, listen, I want 20% if I'm going to approve this for you, for the country, for our country, for the U.S. I don't want it myself. You know, every time I say like 747, I want, yeah, for the Air Force. So I just wanted, so when I say I want 20, I want for the country. I only care about the country. I don't care about myself. And he said, would you make it 15? So we negotiate a little deal. So he's selling a essentially old chip that Huawei has a similar chip, a chip that does the same thing. And I said, good, if I'm going to give it to you, because they have a, they have a stopper, what we call a stopper, not allowed to do it. It's really known as a restrictive covenant. And I said, if I'm going to do that, I want you to pay us as a country something, because I'm giving you a release. I released them only from the H20. Now, on the Blackwell, I think he's coming to see me again about that. But that will be a unenhanced version of the big one. Like, I don't know if you know it, we will sometimes sell fighter jets to a country and we'll give them 20% less than we have. Do you know what I mean, right? That's the same.
So on Russia, do you see a time, Mr. President, when there could be normal trade between the U.S. and Russia? Should your meeting go well, should there be peace?
I do, yeah. Russia has a very valuable piece of land. If Vladimir Putin would go toward business instead of toward war, it's a warring nation. That's what they do. They fight a lot of wars. A friend of mine said Russia's tough because they just keep on fighting. They beat Hitler, so did we, and they beat Napoleon. They've been doing this for a long time. I asked a question to a very, very smart man that some people like and some people don't like. Viktor Orban, right, from Hungary, the head of Hungary, and he's in that same area and knows the two countries very well. I said, this was before Biden didn't do anything to get us out of it. He could have gotten us out of that. It would have never happened. I said, so can Russia be beaten by Ukraine? He looked at me like, what a stupid question. He said, Russia's a massive country, and they win their country, and they win their life through wars. They fight wars. That's what they do. He said, China beats you with trade. Russia beats you with war. That was a very interesting statement. China's not beating us with trade. Not when I'm in charge. But they were beating Biden with trade, but they never beat us with trade. Don't forget, China had to pay $400 billion worth of tariffs when I was last time. That was last time. And if we didn't have COVID, all of this stuff we would be loaded. We're finding hundreds of billions of dollars of cash is pouring into our country now because of tariffs. And all we're doing is we're doing what they do to us. It's so beautiful to see it. They found last month, as you saw, $25 billion of excess cash flow. They're saying, where did it come from? I said, I'll tell you where it came from. It came from a place called tariffs, and we're doing very well. We're really doing well. But I expect to have a meeting with Putin that I think it'll be good, but it might be bad. And I'm here for one reason, to get rid of a war that somebody else started. Should have never happened. And if I could end it, great. Complex war, a lot of bad blood, But Zelensky's been there for 3.5 years. So if you put him in a room, now I will say this, ultimately I'm going to put the two of them in a room. I'll be there or I won't be there. And I think it'll get solved. Yeah, please be happy.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Excuse me, I'm going to suggest, because do you have any other questions on DC? Because I don't want them to be. Wait. These are incredible people. I don't want them to be standing up here on subjects that. Does anybody have a question of them? And then you guys can leave. Okay, a question, Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. All right.
And by the way, this is only on DC, and then they're going to leave because it's unfair to have them stand up here all day long.
I agree.
Brian.
I've got two questions for you. First, about DC. This is personal for me as well. Last year, I was robbed on the streets by one of these teenage thugs. Had a gun, got away with it. Let's talk about the effort that between law enforcement, prosecutors, and judges, because it's a recycling belt. Like, these kids go, they don't fear the police. They know it. If you talk about how we've got to get these judges and put these kids behind bars,
right.
Adult crimes deserve adult penalties. And my second question, I'll after you answer that, please.
Do you want me to answer?
Oh, whoever wants to take it.
Okay, it's real. Do you want me to answer it? Go ahead.
And that was the US President Donald Trump's news conference on his plans to fight crime in Washington, D.C. Trump has announced that he is placing Washington Police Department under direct federal control and deploying National Guard troops to the national capital. Apart from that, during his Q&A with the reporters, Trump asserted that he will tell the Russian president, who is slated to visit the U.S. this Friday, to end the war, and time and again outlined that the Ukraine-Russia war is not his war but that of Joe Biden.
Youth Rehabilitation Incarceration Reduction Act, and now they want to seal.
All right, moving on to other news. 670 days. That's how long Israel has waged a relentless campaign of siege, starvation, and slaughter in Gaza. Countries around the world, and now even Israelis, have accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of trying to erase Gaza. But he remains brazen, even going as far as to justify it and discrediting reports and images of starvation in Gaza as lies. On Monday, Palestinians in Gaza City held funerals for loved ones killed in an Israeli strike that targeted Zetuan neighborhood southeast of Gaza City. Palestinians reported the heaviest bombardments in weeks in areas east of Gaza City. And that's just hours after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he expected to complete a new expanded offensive in the enclave fairly quickly. Witnesses also said that Israeli tanks and planes pounded Sabra, Zetuan, and Shejaya, 3 eastern suburbs of Gaza City, pushing many families out of their homes westwards. Gazans also gathered to bury 6 journalists killed in an Israeli strike, 5 from the Qatari broadcaster Al Jazeera. Among them was 28-year-old Anas al-Sharif, who was one of Gaza's most recognizable reporters. Also killed were Mohammed Krekhe, Ibrahim Zahir, Mohammed Nofal, Momin Aliva, and freelance journalist Mohammed al-Khaldi. Israel accused Sharif of being a terrorist linked to Hamas, publishing a graphic branding him eliminated. Al Jazeera says its team was hit while working in a press tent outside Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital. Mourners, some in blue press flag jackets, carried the bodies through narrow lanes to their graves. The United Nations called the killings a grave breach of international humanitarian law. And Qatar's Prime Minister called them crimes beyond imagination. Not just that, from around the world too, condemnation poured in. Italy's defense minister accused the Israeli government of having lost its reason and humanity and signaled openness to sanctions. And all this comes as Netanyahu pushes to seize Gaza. Netanyahu said on Sunday that he is determined to press ahead with the new plan to take over Gaza City and said that the Israeli army have taken control of about 70 to 75% of Gaza. Netanyahu's plan has also triggered demonstrations in Israel. Thousands took to the streets in Tel Aviv to call for an end to the war in Gaza. Demonstrators wave signs and hold up pictures of hostages still being held in the Palestinian territory, as they call on the government to secure their release. Allies have also condemned it. Germany has decided to suspend some weapons shipments to Israel. And Australia has joined a number of nations in saying that it will recognize a Palestinian state. But Netanyahu remains defiant. He has said, "We will win the war with or without the support of others." And what about the United States of America? It says that military plans are pretty much up to Israel in what looks like a brazen endorsement of the Israeli plans to take control of Gaza. The United Nations continues to warn that Netanyahu's expansion plan could trigger another calamity. Gaza is already on the brink of famine, with aid severely disrupted and restricted. According to Gaza Health Ministry, at least 61,430 Palestinians have been killed since the war began. Almost 2 years later, life for Palestinians, it has now been essentially reduced to survival. And this weekend, 5 more died from malnutrition. The total now stands at 217, and this includes at least 100 children. The Save the Children organization has called it a devastating milestone that shames the world, yet strikes on Gaza continue. In northern Gaza, families are trekking over 10 kilometers to the Zikkim crossing just for one bag of wheat. Since late May, 1,373 people have been killed trying to get food, most the UN says by the Israeli forces. But ask the residents of Gaza, and they say it's rather a grim choice. You either risk your lives, bullets, or you starve literally to death. Global condemnation continues to grow at this point of time, and today French President Emmanuel Macron warned that Israel's plan for Gaza City is a disaster. It's a path to permanent war. In the statement, Macron said it was important to establish a UN-mandated stabilization mission to secure the Gaza Strip. He said, and I quote him here, "The Security Council must now work to establish this mission and give it a mandate. I've asked my teams to work on this without delay with our partners," unquote. Now, 3/4 of UN members recognize or plan to recognize a Palestinian state. As I mentioned earlier, Australia will make it official at the UN General Assembly in September. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese calls it a part of a coordinated global effort for a two-state solution, which he has described as humanity's best hope at this point of time. To end the cycle of violence, that is. Now, the Palestinian Authority has also promised to recognize Israel's right to exist, hold elections, and demilitarize. The question is, will things change coming September? We can certainly hope so. But for now, the shameful reality is that 670 days since the war started, tens of thousands of lives have been lost, hundreds of children have been starved, and those who are left are fighting for survival. The question the world is now asking, how much longer? In Lebanon's south, a highway turned into a war zone as an Israeli airstrike hit a car near Sidon, killing one person. And this is the latest in a string of attacks despite a November ceasefire. The Lebanese army cordoned off the wreckage as Hezbollah accused Israel of adding another crime to its record. The question is the fragile calm collapsing? Take a look. Earlier on Gravitas, we told you about the mystery around disappearance of Chinese President Xi Jinping's top-ranking officials, which now seems to be thickening with the detention of a senior Chinese diplomat. And all this sparks concerns of any kind of turmoil at the very top. According to a report in the Wall Street Journal, Liu Jiangchao, he has been detained by authorities for questioning. He was reportedly taken away after returning to Beijing in late July from an overseas work trip. Not just that, his house too was also reportedly searched by the authorities for reasons perhaps unclear to many at this point of time. Now, Liu's detention marks the vanishing of a high-level diplomat. Since China ousted its former foreign minister and the Chinese President Xi Jinping's protege, we're talking about Qin Gang, in 2023, and that's following an unexplained public absence. Not just that, the former Defense Minister General Li Shangfu in August the same year. But what exactly makes Liu's sudden disappearance headline-grabbing, and why does it matter? Well, for starters, Liu's top-notch academic and administrative credentials, which propped him to a top spot as a ministry spokesperson. Now, since May 2022, Oxford-educated Liu has been heading the Communist Party's International Department. It's an agency for outreaches to foreign political parties and in parallel to China's foreign ministry. So, Liu has traveled to more than 20 nations and met officials from more than 160 countries, most notably the then US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Liu has also served in China's mission to the United Kingdom and later as an ambassador to Indonesia and the Philippines. So, he is someone known to prioritize as well as defend China's interests above all. Traits of a true nationalist, who happened to be in the running to potentially become China's next foreign minister, succeeding Wang Yi. But no such promotion was announced at a recent annual government reshuffle. So what happened? What changed? Did the insiders in the Xi Jinping government perceive Liu to be a threat, as well as his work based around bringing the United States and China closer? Or were they perhaps cautious of Liu's role in mitigating corruption that helped track down corrupt officials who fled overseas, that is between 2015 and 2018, thinking that it could possibly expose some of their own? This also brings into focus Xi Jinping's very own dream team, a loyal clique of officers who can do or die for the interest of Xi's Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, quite literally, which also means leaving less room for competition and picking out bones of contention early on. At this very juncture, the silence of Xi Jinping himself too on the series of disappearances in China feels ominous and equal parts disconcerting, as he reportedly struggles to maintain the party state apparatus. The Indian Air Force is running against time. Squadron numbers are falling, threats from China and Pakistan are sharpening, and the need for new fighters has never been more urgent. This next report by WION's Siddhant Sibul explains the details.
The clock is ticking, and the Indian Air Force, the guardians of the nation's airspace, are facing a critical shortfall. Their squadron strength is falling perilously below the levels required to effectively counter a combined threat from two hostile borders. Now, with the legendary MiG-21 fighter jets set to retire in September, the gap is only set to increase. With that, India will be left with just 29 active fighter squadrons, far below the sanctioned strength of 42. That's not just a dip, that's a dive into dangerous territory. Pakistan has around 25 squadrons, China having 66. A fighter squadron is generally comprised of 16 to 18 aircraft. There is also a shortfall in fighter squadrons, delays in aircraft acquisitions, pilot shortages, and inadequate training infrastructure. These factors have eroded the IAF's combat edge, with officials like Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh publicly emphasizing the need for urgent reforms to prevent further decline. Despite ongoing modernization efforts under initiatives like Make in India, projections indicate that full readiness goals may remain elusive for years.
The impact of having a suboptimal squadron strength is something that the government needs to ponder. And I'm sure a lot of discussions are ongoing, because for a two-front threat, which it is that India is now facing, just having 30-odd squadrons, or maybe even 29 at present stage, is just not acceptable. Quantity has got a quality of its own. So since we have two fronts, this becomes serious. Earlier, we had said in the last 5 odd years, we had sort of moved all our attention to the northern border and thinking that the western border would be taken care of. But what's happened in May, the action which is there shows that the Air Force has to be as active as it was before on the western border too.
This isn't just a numbers game, it's a profound strategic vulnerability that has reportedly driven the IAF into a fresh push to accelerate a deal for new fighter jets, with the French-built Rafale at the very top of their list. While the IAF maintains core operational capabilities through exercises and limited inductions, systemic shortages pose risks to long-term readiness. Government intervention to accelerate acquisitions and resolve personnel issues is critical to restoring balance. With Siddhant Sibul, Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Once hailed as the crown jewel of American air power, The F-35 stealth fighter now faces a buyer's revolt. From Canada to Switzerland, once eager customers are slamming the brakes. Tariffs, ballooning costs, and political backlash, all these factors are turning the jet into Washington's loneliest weapon. Our next report telling you more.
The F-35 Lightning II is the very definition of cutting-edge warfare. It's stealthy, lethal, and packed with sensors that can track an enemy before they even know they're being hunted. About 20 countries operate it, and it was once the most sought after in global defense shopping. But today, the jet's toughest battle isn't in the skies, it's on the geopolitical matrix. After Spain, now neutral Switzerland is pushing back against buying the American warplane. Earlier, NATO allies Portugal and Canada also voiced hesitation, despite being part of the F-35's political and industrial ecosystem. With over 500 jets already flying combat missions and orders for hundreds more, it was long positioned as the de facto NATO gold standard. Now, Switzerland, after lengthy deliberations, is actively reconsidering its purchase of the F-35s. The reason? A staggering 39% tariff imposed by the US, a punitive financial strike that has sent shockwaves through its political establishment. The decision exposes a new brutal reality for America's allies. The jet is no longer just a weapon, but a pawn in a larger, volatile trade war. There's also the cost factor. Its costs run up to $100 million per unit, depending on the variant. This follows similar cold feet from NATO allies Portugal and Canada, who have also expressed deep misgivings about committing to the F-35 program. The message is clear. For all its unparalleled might in the sky, the F-35's Achilles heel is not its technology, but the unpredictable politics of its manufacturer, making a once unquestionable acquisition a political and economic liability under President Donald Trump. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, China is set to begin work on its big railway project. The construction on the Xinjiang-Tibet Railway, it is set to begin this year. The strategic rail line will link Hotan in Xinjiang with Lhasa, the capital of Tibet. The railway, managed by the newly registered Xinjiang-Tibet Railway Company under China State Railway Group, will form a roughly 2,000-kilometer corridor connecting China's northwestern and southwestern regions. Traversing some of the world's highest and most challenging mountain ranges, including the Himalayas, the railway will average elevations above 4,500 meters. The construction will have to take place through challenging geographical conditions, including extreme cold and permafrost regions. Now, the Xinjiang-Tibet Railway is one of 4 lines planned to connect Tibet with the rest of China. According to reports, it aims to establish a 5,000-kilometer plateau rail framework centered on Lhasa by 2035. Some parts of the railway will closely follow the line of actual control. That's the boundary between China and India. And planning for the railway dates back to 2008. That's when the planning started, and it gained momentum in recent years. With surveys and design tenders launched in 2022. Reports citing China's Ministry of Transport confirmed that the construction is slated to begin this year itself. In northern Vietnam, there's a stretch of green farmland that has been feeding families for generations. Banana groves, fruit orchards, plots passed down for decades. But in next month, the bulldozers will arrive and their place, a luxury golf resort will be built, one worth $1.5 billion. And guess what? It will carry the Trump family name. Vietnamese farmers are being asked to vacate their land, which they have cultivated for years, for a mere compensation of roughly $3,200 and some rice. Now, just to be precise here, rice rations for a few months. And so what we have just reported to you is not a bad joke. It is the offer made to the Vietnamese farmers. According to a report by Reuters news agency, the same offer is being made to thousands of villagers in Vietnam's Hoang Nguyen province, which is located just outside Hanoi. Builders call it an opportunity, but farmers, they call it eviction. The 990-hectare site has been earmarked for a sprawling resort with manicured greens replacing banana trees and the orchards there. It's the Trump family's first foray into Vietnam. And the government cleared the path very quickly. Approvals fast-tracked, right in the middle of negotiating a major trade deal with Washington. At first, compensation forecast exceeded $500 million, but somewhere along the way, that figure quietly shrank. Now, according to Reuters, offers range from $12 to $30 per square meter. A local official admits that land here rarely goes for more than $14, that is. The farmers have only one choice at this point of time: move on, or at least try to. Let's not forget, some of these farmers have no skill other than farming. So they are stuck with a low compensation, which will not help their lives, of course, in the future. Some see this as a chance to cash in. Land prices in the area have already jumped fivefold since it was announced in October. Lawyers and investors promise the resort will bring better jobs and richer customers to Vietnam. But the irony isn't lost on the people who actually work on the land. Many of them in the 50s, 60s, even 70s. The question is, what are they supposed to do for their livelihood? Vietnam's Prime Minister has said that the farmers will be reimbursed fairly. He said so in May at the groundbreaking ceremony, a ceremony attended by Eric Trump, who stood smiling in the crowd. The Trump organization will run this club when it's finished. They will not be paying for the land or the rice. That's on the Vietnamese builders who paid $5 million just for the right to put the Trump name on it. Trump himself says that his assets are held in a trust managed by his children. But financial disclosures show the income still flows back to him. So here's what it looks like on the ground right now. Thousands of farmers pay out that don't match the market, a fistful of rice as a part of the severance, and a golf course rising where farmland once stood. In a landmark judgment today, the Supreme Court of India has struck down the reservation of 6 posts exclusively for men in the Judge Advocate General or the JAG branch of the Indian Army, ruling that vacancies cannot be reserved for men or restricted for women, calling the practice arbitrary. The court ruled that reserving 6 out of 9 posts only for men was discriminatory and it violated the principles of equality enshrined in the Indian Constitution. A bench of Justice Manmohan and Justice Dipankar Datta said, and I quote here, that the executive cannot reserve vacancies for men. The seats of 6 for men and 3 for women are arbitrary and cannot be allowed under the guise of induction, unquote. The Apex Court further stated that no nation can be secure if such policies are followed. It further directed the union to conduct recruitment in a gender-neutral manner and publish the combined merit list for all contestants, which include men and women. Adding to that, the court affirmed that the true meaning of gender neutrality and 2023 rules is that the union shall select the most meritorious candidates, and restricting the seats of women is violative of right to equality. The ruling was passed on in a petition filed by 2 women who sought appointment to the post of JAG, and they were then disappointed by 2023 notification, which had designated 6 posts for men and only 3 for women. The court has told that the 2 petitioners had secured the 4th and the 5th rank among various contestants, higher than several other contestants. But they were not selected due to the limited vacancies reserved for women. The Apex Court has now ordered the induction of the first woman petitioner into the JAG department, but denied relief for the other, citing her merit position. However, this landmark decision paves the way for increased participation of women in key roles within the Indian military. If you're based out of Delhi NCR, I have a question for you. Have you or anybody you know faced any kind of harassment from stray dogs on the streets? Or have you been followed by them or bitten by them? Regardless of a yes or a no, there's news for you. In a bid to address the growing stray dog menace in the Delhi NCR region, the Supreme Court of India has directed municipal authorities to capture all stray dogs from localities within next 8 weeks and relocate them to designated dog shelters. The Apex Court, while hearing a suo motu case on the rising rabies cases and fatalities from stray dog bites, called the situation grim and disturbing. Needless to say, this had the camps divided. While a section of residents hailed the move, animal activists argued that civic bodies, they lack both the land and funds to carry out the task. They also warned that a step like this could in fact worsen human-animal conflict further. Well, former Minister of Women and Child Development of India and animal rights activist Maneka Gandhi has also weighed in on the matter. Take a listen.
If you want to, say, take all the dogs of Delhi into shelters, then you must create the shelters. There's not a single shelter in Delhi run by government. So there are 3 lakh dogs. You're going to put 3 lakh dogs into how many shelters? You don't even have one. So to make those shelters, you have to spend at least 15,000 crores because you have to find 3,000 places. Those places cannot be in colonies, so you have to find them where nobody lives.
People in Delhi NCR can also be seen holding demonstrations of the Supreme Court's orders, some of whom have also been detained by the police. Welcoming the Supreme Court order, Delhi Chief Minister Rekha Gupta said, and I quote her here, residents of Delhi have been troubled by the stray dog menace for many years. We will implement the Supreme Court's order in a planned and systematic manner, unquote. She also assured that the Delhi government will soon initiate a policy to help implement the Supreme Court order in a systematic manner.
करके दिल्ली के सामने खड़ी है। कोर्ट ने जो आदेश दिया है वो भी हमारे
In Afghanistan, climate extremes are uprooting entire communities, from years-long droughts that kill crops to sudden floods that wash away homes. For several families, leaving is no longer a choice, but a matter of survival. Take a look.
When the climate changed, it brought drought. The mountains, the wheat, and other agricultural products dried up and were destroyed.
The flood took away all the food and belongings we had. It also destroyed our house.
Whatever we planted, we haven't harvested a thing. Nothing has grown and we've gained nothing from it.
Raising kids in a place like this is extremely hard. What would you do when a 2 or 3-year-old is crying and there is no food?
And with that, we slip into a very short break. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness. To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Vielleicht nur